All right, three, two, one. Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. I am your host, Blythe Brumleve, and we are back for round two, I guess week two of going live on LinkedIn and YouTube for folks who may have missed the first edition or maybe are not, aware, probably not aware, but let me go ahead and just break it down for you. I am one of 19 podcasters selected for LinkedIn's Podcast Academy. It started in late March. And one of the requirements is to A, write a newsletter, and B, start up a live stream and go live at least once a month. So we are already over our quota for the month of May because this is the second time we are going live. And I'm going to be doing things a little bit different than what you may see in traditional live broadcasts. There's typically in a live broadcast, there's a lot of interaction with the community, which is great on one side of the coin, but then on the other side of the coin, it's terrible to listen to on replay. So my thought process going into these broadcasts is to create an episode that can be community building, but also be a great listen if you're listening, not in a live format. So if you are listening later on, or if you're watching later on, then it is still a great show and you don't have to worry about me pausing the conversation, every few minutes just to say what's up to folks. I appreciate everybody who, watches my content and reads and digests it, but I want to be respectful to the folks that aren't able to watch live, which is the overwhelming majority of folks cannot watch live. So if you have any questions, any feedback that you would like to give me, be sure to leave them in the comments because I do, even though these broadcasts are quote unquote live, I record them right after my appearance on FreightWaves Now every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So the sort of the flow of how the show goes is that I pick a topic that I can kind of discuss with the talent over at FreightWaves. And then as soon as that broadcast is completed, then I hop on here to be able to dive in more, I guess, deeply, diving deeper into these topics that deserve a little bit more of a fleshing out. So as soon as I record that, then I schedule it to go live, quote unquote, at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I feel like that's a good time frame for folks who are just getting back to lunch, but not exactly ready to get into the workday. So I'm trying to play to both sides of the going live and then also the podcast listeners. So hopefully y'all respect that and not respect it or just understand it and understand where I'm coming from, that when these broadcasts do quote unquote go live, I am in the comments. I am answering questions. I'm, following up with more information, maybe something that I missed during the broadcast. But just so you know, that's sort of the workflow and the behind the scenes of how I think about this kind of content. And, we should probably just go ahead and dive into it. And this show's topic is going to be how the attention economy is evolving. And that may sound a little familiar, especially to Everything is Logistics podcast members, because we covered this topic pretty in depth with Grace Sharkey, another FreightWaves talent. She comes on the podcast every month, and we have a couple topics that we really dive deep into. We talked for an hour and a half with a lot of the conversation revolving around this topic. And I wanted to be able to shine a little bit more light on what creators, podcasters, content marketers, what you can do because of in the face of all of this changing that's going on, from Google to AI to legacy media. All of these things are happening all at once. It's a lot to sort of filter through. I've done it for you, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into what is the attention economy. And at its core, at its simplest core, it is where we are spending our time consuming information. The majority of that attention today, and for the last, say, handful of years, we've been focusing that attention online. So think social media, think YouTube, think anywhere, Netflix, anywhere else where streaming platforms, any of these platforms where we are spending our time and attention, because time is a finite resource. So now the attention economy, and which I've been covering for years, is really seen as a top commodity on how folks can garner your attention, keep you away from anything else of what you're doing, keep their hooks and their tentacles in you so you stay and you scroll a little bit more and you watch the next video or you watch the next clip and then hopefully you see some of their advertisers. That's essentially the attention economy. And I find it completely fascinating because you can think about the moments online, even though, the internet and the way we know it now has existed probably in the way that we know it now in the last 15 years. So we saw the shift from MySpace to Facebook, Facebook to Instagram, Instagram to TikTok, where platforms are changing and then it results in their users changing how and where they spend their time online. So I think it's completely fascinating. There's a lot of stuff going on in today's world, in today's media landscape. And that's where I want to kick off the first part of this conversation because there's really two sides of the coin here. There's how the legacy media side is handling their dwindling, I guess, influence on society. And then there's the actual quote unquote influencers in a traditional sense, such as an Instagram influencer, and how they're shifting their mindset and they're actually going and getting jobs. So I want to play a couple clips for you. In this first clip, it really breaks down everything that's going on in legacy media right now. And when I say legacy media, I think Fox News, think CNN, think these big cable channels of where folks are spending their time and attention online. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. I'm a little bit more, I guess, familiar with these tools now because of everything that's going on. I say this right now, but I'm going to bring up this first clip. And this is from the CEO of Barstool Sports. So it's her job to understand where the attention economy is going and how that affects her business. It's kind of also affects my business as well and majority of other folks out there. So let's get a recap of what's going on. I'm going to play this clip.
Where are all the media influencers going? Don Lemon is out. Tucker Carlson is out. Spotify is not renewing Joe Rogan. What's really interesting is what happens next. Like Fox News doesn't like when anyone gets bigger than the brand, but Tucker Carlson is honestly quite as big as it gets. Does he go to another network or does he strike out on his own? Like Megyn Kelly went from one network to another. Now she's struck out on her own. Can you make more money if you just build your own tribe? Don Lemon obviously just gets embroiled in some $20 million lawsuit with CNN. Joe Rogan, I'm like, God, I wish Joe Rogan could come to Barstool, but also why would Joe Rogan come to Barstool? Like Joe Rogan can go build a massive, massive, massive business on YouTube, which he currently has and enjoys today. And then you question like, all right, Spotify spent hundreds of millions of dollars in podcast creation tools and celebrities and personalities, and they're walking away from all of that. Is that because they don't like the smoke and employees don't like people like Rogan? Is it because their sales team can't monetize it the way they need to? Is it because podcasting is now being vlogcasting and YouTube is beating Spotify in terms of viewership? Like there's so much happening right now. It's such a big question. Is the era of a media personality gone and only to be replaced by influencers? Like are media brands and personalities going to be the new top influencers in that ecosystem? That's my one-on-one today. What do you guys think?
So great clip from Erica on there that basically just summarizes everything that's going on in legacy media at this time. Now, a few things that clip was from 2 weeks ago, and so much has already changed since then. Number one, we have the Spotify investments into exclusive shows that seems to be going away. For example, like a Joe Rogan episode dropping each day, Spotify has made the equivalent comparison that it is the equivalent of a Taylor Swift album dropping every single day. That's the impact of listenership and viewership that has been impacted by Spotify by simply having one creator on their platform. Now, on the reverse, it has really affected the audience of Joe Rogan because he's coming from the YouTube platform where you can see the comments, you can see the likes on a video, you can watch incredibly more clips on the YouTube experience and get recommended clips based on their algorithm, which is far superior than Spotify's recommendation algorithm. I hate listening to podcasts in Spotify, and the reason I even entertain it is because Rogan is there, and the reason I do it is not necessarily because of Rogan, but because of the guests that he has on his show to have those long form conversations. I think that that's really fascinating, to hear from scientists and doctors and things like that. So I followed his platform to Spotify. It's still a terrible experience. The podcast shut down in the middle of it. Maybe you hit pause and you need to go do something and you come back. They lose your place on where you were listening to in the podcast, and then you just never really listen to the end of that show. It's happened to me several times. I am an Overcast truther. Overcast is a podcast app that you can add different playlists, and I love it. That's my podcast app of choice. To me, there are no really other apps that come close in that regard. So I like Overcast. And if there's an occasional episode of a Spotify exclusive, then I will go and listen to that on occasion. But it's very few and far between as far as that's concerned. Now, with that being said, the fact that Rogan is going back to YouTube, I think just signals sort of the power of that platform and being able that their algorithm is just the best. It is one of those things where I will see a show and it's a 3-hour long show, and I think to myself, there's no way I'm watching that. But then I'll get the clips of the discussion, and the clips are anywhere from 10 minutes to 30 minutes long. And if the guest is really interesting, I'll sit there and watch one clip, and then I might watch another, and then I might watch another, and then before you know it, it's 3 hours of me watching this conversation that I had zero intention of watching. And so that's where sort of the power of the YouTube algorithm comes into play. And then I think the intimidation of seeing a 3-hour long broadcast and saying, absolutely not, I'm not spending my time listening to this conversation unless it's somebody that you really want to listen to. So Rogan going back to YouTube, probably taking a similar route as to my favorite news program, which is Breaking Points. They're an independently funded, listener funded show. So they don't take outside sponsorship. They only take money and revenue from their audience, which leaves them which makes them more trustworthy to the audience because that's who they are beholden to. Even if you have sponsors and advertisers, you can think about it that you're going to maintain your integrity, that you're going to maintain, I guess, quality of the show and content decisions, creative decisions. But if you have a sponsor, it's a little bit in the back of your mind that you don't want to piss them off, and you don't want to make them angry because you could potentially lose that part of your revenue stream, which is probably a very high majority of your revenue stream. So we have that on one side. Now, she mentioned also in that clip with Tucker Carlson, when that clip was posted, it was 2 weeks ago. He's already made the decision that he's going to be joining Twitter and putting his content exclusively on Twitter, which I thought was really sort of just questionable, because you just dealt with this situation where you have someone controlling your content at a major news organization. So now you're going to just put yourself in the same position and do that for another company. I thought that was a really strange move until I heard about sort of the legal theory around Tucker's move to Twitter. And it's theorized that in his contract, he was able to keep creative control of his social media accounts. If he keeps creative control of his social media accounts, then that's less of a chance for him to get hit with a non-compete or get sued in the future. If he were to go to YouTube or another competing news program, that's probably what his contract prevented him from doing. But by going direct on Twitter, because he already has that social media profile, then that is legally a way for him to still be able to get content out to his audience without, sort of messing with the contract terms with Fox News. They're going to go head to head, legal battle wise, probably for the foreseeable future. But that kind of personality who brings in that amount of viewership does not want to just sit around and wait and wait for, the legal issues to sort of dry up. He's going to want to capitalize on the opportunity, especially with an upcoming presidential election. So that's the reason for the move for him to Twitter. Now, the next part of this is, as we're kind of talking about, influencers and social media, the next clip I want to play is going to come from this influencer, or not influencer, but this creator, and this, you'll understand, I guess, sort of my not hesitancy, but the way I'm using these labels, creator versus influencer. And after I play this next clip, then you'll have a sort of a better understanding of why there's now a distinction between those two things. So here we
The
go.
year is 2023, so why are we still talking about influencer culture like it's 2019? Everyone's talking about this New York Times profile by Maddie Kahn about the influencer leave from America, leaving influencing and taking a 9-to-5 job. And I think Maddie did a great job on this profile of Lee. But I have one major problem with the way Lee's career is covered. The bigger story here is that the influencer economy no longer reigns supreme. We're now in the creator economy. So when I think about the heyday of the influencer era, I'm thinking about the 2010s. I'm thinking about celebrities like the Kardashians or Gwyneth Paltrow, who sold us a kind of aspirational lifestyle. And then a platform like Instagram made it possible for quote unquote normal, but still often thin, beautiful white women could become influencers, and they could become kind of micro celebrities and sell a similar aspirational lifestyle to their followers by promoting products, programs, services, clothing, makeup items, etc. If I say the phrase to you, wellness influencer, you have an image in your mind of exactly what I mean. So I think Lee from America saw the writing on the wall and said to herself, like, this is changing, this is over, I need to pivot. I think what the New York Times story misses is that the reason she needs to pivot is that that complete era is over. When I say we're in the creator economy now, I mean we're living in the influence of TikTok. Gen Z does not want to watch advertisements of me recommending products to them. Gen Z wants to come on TikTok and be entertained, be inspired, or learn something. And so it's a kind of adapt or perish moment. Lee from America has pivoted to Substack. So she has become a creator by writing a Substack newsletter to leave influencing. When I see millennial women or Gen X women on Instagram staging these like perfect photo shoots to promote something, and they're like most photogenic lighting and in their best outfit with their best hair and makeup done, it almost looks to me like they're like cosplaying another era, because we're no longer in that era anymore. As a creative person, I find this to be a relief. And I find the creators that I follow on TikTok to be so much more real and authentic. I know that word is overused. Than influencers on Instagram.
So great thought process from that creator over on TikTok, because it really does highlight a different era. I remember when I had first gotten into doing content. I've been writing, I've been blog. I came up in the blogging era, which for folks who are a little bit of the elder millennials, you'll understand what that blogging era looked like. And when you come up in that blogging era, then you started with a blog, and then social media came into the scene. And so there was a local group that was getting started here in North Florida that was trying to gather up the folks who were in that area, who were doing these things online, not exactly sure of where it was going to go. And I remember at one of these dinners, there was a high profile woman there, and she was a lawyer full time. But then on the other side, she really liked crafting these office outfits looks. She would do the perfect Instagram photo, the perfect Instagram grid. She would have, the color palette on her grid was just perfection. She had all of these different things that she meticulously planned for her Instagram account. And then come to find out, the way that she was making money was either she was first not making money at all, she was just getting free product. But then on the flip side, the way that she would make some money is by a platform called Like to Know It. And if you were to like the photo on Instagram, then you would get notified of where to actually buy the clothes that she was referencing in the photos. But if you were to do that as a fan of hers, if you were to like the photo, see the outfit, make the purchase, if you were to do all of those things, which is extremely low, it's something like less than 3% of people on Instagram actually click a link and go outside of the platform. It's that low, and it's even lower on things like that. But she was only making about 12 cents on one of those purchases. 12 cents. So needless to say, after this dinner, I knew that this wasn't going to be a pathway for me. Number one, I just frankly didn't care about my grid. My Instagram page is my Instagram page. I'm going to post whatever I want, whenever I want, the algorithm be damned. And there was a completely other different mindset that was happening at the same time. And that other mindset of the perfection, of the highly curated photos, the Photoshop, the filters. There was just a whole lot of that side of that just didn't interest me. So when a platform like TikTok comes around and there are people with no makeup on making videos, there are people who are putting their makeup on while teaching you something. My experience on that platform, and I know it's not without its own drama. We're not going to get into that with this episode, but every time I'm on that platform, I laugh or I learn. And that is something that I do not experience in the rest of social media. And so that aspect of it, not to mention, speaking of, we mentioned YouTube's algorithm being very good. TikTok algorithm, especially for short form content, it's arguably even better. So with that sort of shift in how we're spending our time online, shifted to TikTok, and then it also shifted the kind of content that the overwhelming majority of people resonate with, and that is the really quick video. This is what I just saw. Check it out. Almost like just a real video that hasn't been heavily like over edited. I mean, those still exist, don't get me wrong, but the content that just resonates the most is you don't have to be drop dead gorgeous beautiful to go viral on TikTok. And I think that was sort of the first sort of example of a social media platform giving you the content that you want to see, not necessarily based on the people that you're already following. And so it incentivizes folks to make content that people resonate with. And that has impacted every other social media platform. I mean, look at Twitter. Twitter has switched from they have now a For You page because of TikTok. Shorts has gone over to YouTube as a major, major push from YouTube because they want the short form content to lead into the long form content. And those shorts videos are placed a higher priority on their feed versus regular videos. So TikTok has had this massive impact into how all of these other platforms are interacting. And really, that also affects how creators are making content for those platforms as well. So I thought that was really, really intriguing as far as how this shift is happening from the, I guess, traditional Instagram influencer to these other platforms, and how you've really seen a lot of the traditional Instagram influencers completely fail when they try to take that audience to another platform, to a YouTube, to a TikTok, because it's very challenging for them to switch it up into where they can't perfect every little thing and they just got to be comfortable just rolling with the punches. So that's another era really era that is evolving right before our eyes, where there's still a connotation around the term influencer. You think of someone a little bit maybe negatively if they call themselves an influencer, but influencers in the way that it's thought have always been around. Now we're sort of putting a prettier label on it and calling them a creator, but that creator has a different mindset, I think, behind their content. Like, I would call myself a creator, but I would cringe if someone calls me, I would cringe just a little bit, maybe not a lot, but I would cringe a little bit if somebody called me an influencer, even though I know that that's also a fair, I guess, assumption to make. But when I think of influencer, I'm still thinking of that perfect grid. Really all I have to offer is like makeup tips. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that because I watch makeup influencers too, but I resonate and I follow and I subscribe and I support other people much more who are making me learn something or making me laugh. So it's a different level of value that I put on that kind of content versus everything else. And maybe that shift is happening for other people as well. I mean, you can kind of make that argument with the growth of TikTok and the stagnation or the lack of growth that you're seeing in other platforms like a Facebook, like Instagram. So those things are something to definitely keep in mind, because especially around the shifts of why this is happening, because it happens with the audience of where they're spending their time online. Then these platforms make the adjustments, and then the creators or the influencers of that platform have to either adjust or face the risk of losing their audience altogether. So I think the key for a lot of these creators is asking yourself, how do I turn long form content, and do you want to make long form content? How do you take the long form content or the short form content and turn it into something that you can build a business out of? Because that's really the only point of why you're making this kind of content, and why you're focusing in that area. If there's not a business case tied to it, either right now or in the future, then you kind of have to ask the question of why you're even doing it in the first place. Because a lot of these things that are being shared online, they could just be shared privately, and maybe to each their own, I guess you could say. But on the flip side, if you're a creator and you're wondering how to sort of sort through everything that's going on, I think it's, on one hand, it's never been a better time to be a creator, because with all of these AI tools, and I will get into AI in just a minute, with all of these AI tools, it has been overwhelming how many tools that have come into the space that can now help you do your job better and faster. And so when you keep that in mind, then if you are the creator, if you are a podcaster or YouTuber, which is where I see the most value right now in creating content online, then you can start using these other social media channels to filter that message with short form content. So you create the long form content either through a podcast, a video podcast like this, a live on LinkedIn. So then you take that long form content and you turn it into short form content from it. And that leads into so many different social media clips, email marketing, text-based posts on LinkedIn, newsletter posts on LinkedIn, Twitter threads, things like that. So all of those things can factor into it, but you have to start with the long form content. That's just my personal opinion. I think that's where you can build up your brand. You can build up distribution. And once you own distribution, then you can take that distribution and you can go anywhere with it. You can create your own products that you are 100%, an owner of. Or you can say, if I'm a truck driver and I have hundreds of thousands of followers, sometimes millions of followers on a YouTube, on different social media platforms, I can take my talents, and I know that I can go to the best trucking company and use my talents there, not only from a driving perspective, but also from a social media perspective. There's one TikTok creator called Trucker Wazir, and he makes recruitment style videos. He lets people know what happened to him during his truck driver training. So he went through all of the training and he documented it. His ongoing safety training, things like it's Blitz week right now at the time of recording, and so he makes all of this different content around what a trucker has to go through in order to become a trucker and then to stay a trucker. That kind of content is recruitment gold. And so as a driver, now because he has, I think, like 300,000 followers on TikTok, last time I checked, he probably has more now, but he's able to then be recruited by other trucking companies, go get a better, higher paying job, maybe even get some influencer benefits, some creator benefits, whatever we're calling it nowadays. But he's able to get those additional benefits because he already owns the distribution of the audience, where people are spending their time and attention. So it's just something to keep in mind as far as, these businesses out here who think they want to start a podcast, or, creators who have already started a podcast and they're not exactly sure of, or YouTube, whichever your platform of choice is. If you don't have an end game in mind, then you need to be thinking about it. And it doesn't necessarily have to, I wouldn't recommend trying to think about monetizing your content, but you need to think about what that investment looks like and what the investment will look like in the future, because you're not doing this for nothing. We're not doing this for our health here. We are doing it to garner attention. We're doing it to spread education and spread awareness, whether that's about your company or your product, or maybe a future product or a future company. There's value in the content that you're creating, and you can take that audience with you wherever you go, provided that you've done a good job at actually creating content. So it's a lot of things to, I think, keep in mind. And I think it's a real awakening for a lot of these, especially legacy media companies, who have been sort of used to that audience being built in. And now with dwindling viewership, with dwindling ratings, streaming becoming, the dominant play instead of, a cable subscription, a lot of these legacy media companies are looking themselves in the eye and know that they've already seen the peak and they're on their downward trajectory, and they're losing a lot of their top talent, and their top talent is going independent. And that should be a lesson for all of the other creators out there that if you are already creating content, then you're on the right path. And these other media companies, especially slow to move legacy media news programs, are slow to catch up. But there's opportunity and there's enough for all of us to eat, as long as you are authentic with your audience, you're trustworthy with your audience. If you make a mistake, you own up to it, you apologize for it, and you try to get a little bit better each day. We're all human, and I think that that's something that's been missing from a lot of content creators online, is that we have that sort of that perfection that's existed for a while, and the sort of the thought process that we're safe when we watch, some of these ABC or NBC or any of these other, legacy media news companies, that what we're getting from them is the truth, but we never hear an apology. We never hear a correction unless you're watching some of these other independent creators. Shout out to Breaking Points again, because if they make a mistake on one of their broadcasts, they're going to let you know and they're going to apologize for it, and they're going to try to get better the next day. You never hear that on legacy media channels. And I think it's high time that for a lot of these platforms and for a lot of creators is to look at where legacy media failed their audiences and failed what their responsibilities were to do, and how us as consumers, us as, where we choose to spend our attention, and where that shift is happening. You can also make that choice either from a creator standpoint or from an audience standpoint of who you're going to choose to support and why. So that's one side of the coin. Whew, that was a lot. So the other side of the coin is AI content and Google changing the game again. So I talked a little bit about this on FreightWaves Now, but to recap, 90% of the search market is controlled by Google. More than 60, I want to say 66%, but I'm not exactly. I know it's more than 60% of Alphabet, which is Google's parent company. Alphabet's revenue comes from search. Now, when we think of TikTok, when we think of Instagram, that's where Gen Z is going to make internet searches. So they're going to those platforms first. They're not really going to Google anymore to conduct those searches. However, Google still controls the majority of that market. There's still a hell of a lot of money to be made in the search market. But the caveat there is that an overwhelming majority of search results do not end in a click. And when that is so impactful, because the overwhelming majority of content marketers over the last 10 years have invested the majority of their budgets into making SEO friendly, search engine optimization friendly content to appeal to Google, and to, a lesser extent, to appeal to Bing, maybe Yahoo, DuckDuckGo, some of these other search engine platforms. But Google still controls 90% of it. So if 60% of their revenue comes from search, they're less likely to implement new products that are going to affect that market share for them. Enter AI and Microsoft and ChatGPT. I guess I could call it Microsoft ChatGPT, but Microsoft is a big investor in OpenAI. OpenAI makes ChatGPT. So the Microsoft CEO said a few months back, he's like, I want to make Google dance. Well, Google listened, and they hit their annual event last week, where they mentioned there was a viral video that went around that showed the CEO of Google, I think it's Sundar Pichai, but he made more than 300 references to AI in his one keynote address, talking about all of the new products that Google is releasing, basically kicking and screaming that they've had to release these products into the wild because ChatGPT has a real chance to disrupt how we interact with search engines. And what does the future of a search engine look like whenever you are thinking about it from the lens of, I need to, as a content marketer, I want to know what keyword phrases that people are searching for so I can make content around that, and especially if it's applicable to my business. Now, that has been the main focus. And it's also why, as I stated, that Google has been resistant to entering, debuting any kind of product. They've been heavily investing in AI for years, but they did not want to introduce these products because they feared what it could do to their overall core business strategy. They were forced to do it. So I want to share this Twitter feed on how Google's new search engine and new search engine results page is going to ultimately fare. So I'm going to bring up this tab from The Boring Marketer. So on the screen of what you're looking at right now, and if you're listening to the podcast version, I'm sorry, I'm going to break it down for you. So you know a traditional search engine results page on Google, you have the search engine box, and then you have a list of results on the left-hand side, and then maybe on the right-hand side are some advertisements or Google Maps placement. That is all changing. So the layout is completely changing to where now the first thing you're going to see is not a string of ads and then the actual top 10 results. What you're going to see is the generative AI that anytime you ask it a question, it's going to answer those questions right there on the screen. And so if you're just listening to this broadcast, then what you see is a question that's being asked about two different planets. What planet is the most similar to Earth? That was a search engine phrase that was used. And then Google's AI was used to create the answer to this. So you're not seeing the traditional search engine result link. And the reason this is important is because publishers for years have been making this content with the idea that someone would click on that search engine result, arrive on their website, get the information that they're looking for, and then either book a meeting, book a demo, check out pricing, follow them on social media. That was the end goal of why you would be answering these questions, and why you would spend, as a business, you would spend your time and energy and budget into creating this content to answer these questions. Now, a lot of that is going to be changing to where the answer is just going to be given right on the search engine results page. So the incentive to click is even less now. Already, before Google introduced this, the click-through rate was already dropping dramatically. I mentioned earlier about how a lot of Gen Z and a lot of is it Gen Z? Yeah, a lot of Gen Z and millennials. I guess Gen X too. You could probably, and maybe not Gen X. So millennials and Gen Z, the way that they are searching is going to social media first. They're not necessarily going to Google, but with the respect of the large amount of people who still go to Google, it results in what's called a zero-click search, meaning they got their answer on this page and there is no incentive for them to click through and to get more additional information. This kind of a lot changes that to where you now have a display screen that not only answers your question, but prompts you to ask a follow-up question. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner of this search engine result, of this results page, it says, it's highlighted, ask a follow-up. So it's encouraging you to ask another question about the results that you've just seen. And then it lists a couple of suggested questions of what Google thinks you're going to ask next. And then on the right-hand side, they do cite their sources, which is great to see. It's not something that ChatGPT has done until just recently when they enabled browsing capabilities. For the folks who don't know, ChatGPT has been trained on data up until 2021, unless you have the browser extension plugin, which then brings in, modern results for everything past 2021, including, up to like breaking news. Still a little finicky, but that is the first glimpse of what we are seeing of what the new search engine result page is going to look like. Now, the reason that this is important is because it's going to bring up the next part of what I wanted to discuss. And I'm going to bring up that same tab because it's The Boring Marketer. If you haven't followed them, they are a really great follow over on Twitter. I think they have a really great newsletter too. It's tough to keep up with all the newsletters that's in my inbox right now. But it's basically what they said. The Boring Marketer calls this as basically it's cool stuff that Google is showing on their results page now. It's a mix of Google search, ChatGPT, and TikTok/Reels, but on steroids. So Google has noticed the trend of dwindling search performance. And so this is their attempt at trying to rectify that. But then, if you may remember, the featured snippet, which was also a very big deal in content marketing world. I'm not going to bore you with the details of that, but it was something kind of similar where the incentive to click through wasn't necessarily there for the audience or the searchers to take, because if they get the answer on the screen, there's no incentive to click unless you can think about it from the lens of that you want to be able to optimize your content for nuance and be able to go more in depth with that content. So there's one trick that is really slept on as far as, I guess the way that you conduct your search engine optimization research, aka what the hell do I write about and what the hell are people searching for and how do I help them learn more about my business. That's sort of the matrix that you want to put your content in. And there's one thing that's really slept on. So let me bring up Google first. And if you're watching this, or if you're listening to this, I'm sorry, but this is we're going to the Google search engine results page, or we're going to Google search page. And what this is called is the ABC method. So Income School, which is a great, sort of content training school platform. They are great. I've been a member of them for years, and they teach this ABC method. And they also teach a bunch of other things, but just so you're looking at it from on the screen, so you can kind of see, I'm using the search term freight broker. Now, the key here is you type in that phrase of what you're looking for. Maybe you're trying to recruit more freight brokers. Maybe you're trying to, I don't know, offer them additional training. So if you key in freight broker, little known trick, the ABC method is literally typing in the first letter and then using Google's autofill to give you ideas as to what you should be writing about. Because for folks who do not know, Google does not share their keyword volume information with anyone. It is proprietary data. So Ahrefs, Moz, SEMrush, any of these other keyword tools that are estimating the volume of how often that phrase is being searched, they're just guessing. Now, they're educated guess, but they are just guessing. The only people that have access to that information is the people who work at Google. Now, you can get a hint of what is being searched a lot based on the autofill, based on the ABC technique. So if we just key in our phrase and then we use if we use different letters. So right now I typed out the full word freight broker, and then I'm just going through, I put a space and I put a letter. So I start with A, then I move on to B, then C, and so forth and so forth. And Google in that search engine box will recommend what phrases it thinks I'm trying to go after, simply based on either my own proprietary, not proprietary, but yeah, I guess proprietary search engine results data is trying to help cut down the amount of time of what I'm searching for and finding an answer to it. So as a content marketer, you can use this as insight into what is actually resonating enough volume wise that Google is going to list it in their autofill. So for this example, I'm going to put in sales. So freight broker sales is the keyword that I want to use for this example. Now, what you'll see on this page is that you'll see a couple of different sponsored ads. But this section right here, the people also ask, that is such a little known trick that SEOs or most people, especially in freight that I see making content, SEO focused content, they don't take advantage of the people also asked. That is another key area of where you can find insight as to what Google thinks that next move or that next question that you want answered. It's trying to figure that out, and it will list them here. So the people also asked, which shows up pretty close to the top of the search engine results page. But if you scroll all the way down, then you'll see other related searches. And those other related searches, so freight sales salary, freight broker script, PDF, freight sales meaning, freight broker, cold calling script, which that sounds kind of interesting. So I want to click on that one. But it shows all of these different sponsored listings, of course. And you want to, it's actually showing a query for my own website too. Another tip, anytime you're doing your keyword research, make sure you do it in private mode. Otherwise, your personal search engine habits will affect this results page. So if you do it in private mode, the research is a little bit more attuned to the greater audience and not just yourself. So the reason I bring all of this up is because with all of these new tools that Google has introduced into the market over the last week, Microsoft wanted to make them dance, and they are dancing and they are giving out all of their AI tools and incorporating them into all of their different products. Search is going to change, and it's already changing as we see it right now and how it functions. So as a content marketer, it's up to you to be able to see where the attention is evolving online, and then how can you create content to appeal to those changing habits, but also to answer the questions that your audience has. And that one trick, the ABC method, is a good way to do it, because you're going to have to, the SEO world, where now it is so easy to go into ChatGPT, enter in a keyword phrase, and have 1,000-word blog article written like that. That's already here. And that content is going to be ranking well in the short term, but it's a race to the bottom as far as content is concerned. Everybody is going to have the same content if you just take a keyword phrase and plug it into these platforms and then copy and paste the blog without, ever changing it and then putting it onto your website. That is a race to the bottom. So, but what you can do is use that ABC method, use the autofill method, use people also ask, and you can use that to make a better SEO focused article, or even take it an extra step, which is what I personally would not waste my time writing a long form blog post. I don't think it's worth the effort. I think it's an era of marketing that existed 10 years ago. It does not exist today. And you have to alter and you have to update as attention economy changes, as these platforms change, as they evolve. And one of the ways that you can do that is by getting your executive team, getting the leaders within your company to get on camera to make a video. It doesn't have to be this fancy setup of nice lighting and, $1,000 camera and, $500 microphones. It doesn't have to be all that. You take an iPhone, you get a $20 microphone off Amazon, and you start recording industry experience, expertise, nuance. Yes, XYZ is going on in the market right now, but people also ask, including all of those different questions that other people would ask or other people would have, and including that in your long form video content. And when I say long form, I mean it could be 10 minutes long, whatever the top, it could be an hour long, it could be 30 minutes long. I wouldn't suggest doing it any longer than, say, 45 minutes, because the attention span of people is challenging to, we just talked about the attention economy for a while. So think about it from that lens, respect people's time, make the content as long as it needs to be. If it's a great topic that you can dive really deep into, then go as deep as you need to be. But including the nuance and including your own personal industry expertise, putting your leaders on camera, that is how you stand out. And that is how you make noise outside of what the blog SEO strategy is going to be for the overwhelming majority of companies that are just going to use the easy way out, and it's a race to the bottom. So if you want to succeed in everything that's going on with the attention economy and everything that's going on in the shift in how we spend our time online, and what else is going on with all of these different AI tools that come in to sort of complicate everything in our current plans, then that is that's something that you can see the writing on the wall as far as some of this content that's just, it's not very good. And if a machine can write it, then chances are other machines can write it for other people. So how do you stand out? That's by getting your leaders online, by getting them in front of a camera and recording their expertise, because for now, that cannot be replicated. And for now, that is your best bang for your buck as far as where you're spending your content marketing investments and where your audience is going to be, digesting this content online. Now, the plus side of that is that it puts a face to a name. It establishes trust and credibility. It establishes authenticity, as much as those words are definitely overused. But those things are still important. Even if those words are overused, they're overused because they're that important. And so using them in the structure of your own conversations and your own content will really help you stand out from everybody else who's going to take the easy way out. The best thing that has happened to content marketing is AI, because it helps folks up their game. It helps the creators who don't want to be replaced by an SEO blog writer to pivot to video. I this is probably like PTSD for any of the major like media companies who did the famous like pivot to video back in Facebook's days. But if you own your audience, you can take them wherever you go. Your podcast, your website, and your email list are the only platforms you are ever going to own. So as long as you can use these different distribution channels, LinkedIn, Twitter, even Facebook groups, Instagram to an extent, TikTok, of course, YouTube Shorts, you're using all of these different platforms to point them to the long form content, to make them aware of what your company does, what you believe in, and that will automatically help you stand out from the rest. So hope you enjoyed that lengthy conversation, because I think that this is really important for a lot of content marketers to not keep your head in the sand about this stuff. You have to stay on top of how the market is evolving and how your audience is evolving and how your prospects are evolving. And you have to shift your mindset as a marketer in order to make content that's going to be appealing for all of these different factors that are playing a role in the landscape. It's going to make, in some aspects, it's going to make marketing a lot harder, but in other aspects, especially for folks like me, it's helping, because I'm already practicing what I preach with long form video podcasts, turning them into social and other forms of different content. But I am able to own my audience and then be able to own the distribution and then use social media where it makes sense. And a lot of the times it makes sense with shorter clips, with text-based posts, always evolving, always changing to see what is working from a playbook standpoint. So just, it's a lot. It can feel overwhelming, but I also am a firm believer that it's never been a better time to be a creator. We have all of these tools at our fingertips that are going to help us do our jobs so much faster and do it much more affordably, especially when you think about it from the lens. I used this example in last week's broadcast. I'm not an illustrator. I've always wanted to be, but now I can go into a platform like Midjourney and I can write the text prompt that's going to create the image that I envision, and vice versa. Say if you're an illustrator and you've never been very good at writing, now you can take your art that you've already been creating and you can use a copywriting tool to help you push that art out to other people. So there's lots of different variations of how this can be beneficial. Of course, there are warnings. We'll get into that. That deserves its own sort of topic, and I could go hours and hours on that as well. But ultimately, I choose to believe that these tools are powerful. These tools are beneficial, especially to one person marketing teams, which is, if you're watching this for this long or if you're listening for this long, that likely is you. You're wearing a lot of hats. You're wondering how you're going to get your job done. These tools are aiming to help that. One little, another sort of behind the scenes, like as soon as this live broadcast is done, because of the distribution flow. So I create the broadcast on StreamYard, but I send it out to YouTube and LinkedIn. And once this is done, I can then go to YouTube, snag that URL, and then go to a platform called Opus Clips, which is a new one for me, but they will automatically edit social media clips for you. I was quoted $3,000 to do this same thing a couple weeks ago, and I just did it for free using this tool, Opus Clips. If you haven't tried it yet and you have a YouTube account and you're making videos on YouTube, go try it. It is mind-blowing how cool it is. And in this kind of technology, it's only going to get better. So invest in the long form, invest in the nuance, and pay attention to where people are spending their time and attention online, and you can pivot accordingly. If you start with one social media platform, or if you start with one long form piece of content, you can chop that up and send it out to all these different other social media platforms. Don't send the same message to each one of them, but it should be tailored towards, what the same message you're sending out on Twitter is not going to be the same message that you're sending out on LinkedIn. So keeping all that in mind, it's time to up our game when it comes to content marketing. So AI can do a lot of things. Legacy media is falling apart and new media is growing, but there's never been a better time than right now to use these AI tools to help that one person marketing machine operate on a much more efficient basis. So get your aerial on, get out there where the people are, and start taking these content chances when you've maybe had them on the back burner for a little bit too long. Now is the time to get into it. Skip those long form blog articles that offer no insight, no nuance, and they're just, They're just something that ChatGPT can create in 30 seconds. Skip those and instead use your long form content that you can then take that transcript and you can turn that transcript into an email newsletter. You can take that transcript and turn it into a long blog post. There are different ways that you can play around with it. You can even ask ChatGPT to summarize what your transcript is saying. And that to me is an ethical use case of these platforms, that you can use that to speed up that part of the process. But it needs to still come from a leader within your organization, the source of it anyways. And if you're not doing that, then you are going to fall behind, in the next couple of years as far as content creation benefits are concerned. So pay attention to the market. I don't say all this to scare you. I say this to help you stay prepared and stay on top of what's evolving and what's going on in both the attention economy and content marketing strategy. So that about does it for this week's episode. If you haven't already subscribed, be sure to go over to LinkedIn and look for my email newsletter. You can find it on my profile page. Just search for Blythe Brumleve or Blythe Brum over on LinkedIn. And it's one of the first items that shows right up on my profile. Everything is Logistics newsletter. Get subscribed because I cover topics just like this, plus more, and recap a lot of the podcasts that I drop every week. And I put them all in the newsletter in order to make, the distractions from work a little bit more educational, a little bit more entertaining, hopefully anyways. But if you ever have a question or a comment, or you want something answered in the future, please, please, please drop a comment in this broadcast or shoot me a DM and I will answer it on a future show. But until then, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for your attention. I hope you have a great day. Once again, this is Everything is Logistics. I am Blythe Brumleve. You can find more of my work over on everythingislogistics.com, including the social media links. So make sure that you are following along to get more detailed breakdowns just like this on how you can use a lot of these different tools as it is evolving your workday and your work responsibilities. So thank you again and hope you all have a good day, and go Jags.